After months of anguish, families are reuniting in Israel, their tears of sorrow turning to joy. The breakthrough in the release of hostages, 20 of them, everyone who is alive, brokered through tireless diplomacy, marks the pivotal moment in the conflict that's gripped the region. But is this the end of the war? Not yet. While the release signals a fragile de-escalation, deep-rooted tensions clearly remain. Analysts warn that without addressing core grievances, land, security and justice, peace will stay elusive. The road ahead demands bold leadership and perhaps compromise, but both sides must choose: perpetuate cycles of violence or seize this chance for a dialogue. The future hangs in the balance, with hope flickering but not guaranteed. Will this be a turning point or a pause before the storm? The world watches, yearning for peace, knowing that it requires courage to rebuild trust. Tonight we celebrate the return of the hostages, but tomorrow the hard work of healing truly begins. Can this spark a lasting truce? Only time will tell. Stay with us as we follow this unfolding story of humanity's resilience and the fragile dream of peace.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה.
No one wants peace more than the people of Israel.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death, and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
Joining us now, Blake Sifton. Blake, thanks very much for being with us. It's an incredible day all across the world, certainly in Israel. Could you describe to us the moment when the first batch of hostages actually returned to Israel?
Good evening. It's certainly been a momentous day with a great deal of relief and joy here in Israel. The hostages were released this morning in two separate batches, one from Gaza City and one from Khan Yunis. They were handed over by Hamas to the Red Cross, who brought them to Israeli forces. They were then brought to a military base just inside the border from Gaza, where they had very tear-filled reunions with their family members and underwent initial medical treatment. Now, since then, they've been been brought by military helicopters to 3 medical centers here in Tel Aviv. And actually, just as you were coming to me, I saw another one of these military helicopters flying through the sky, because as they're coming one after another, they're circling over Hostage Square, where tens of thousands of people who have been protesting every week to call for the hostages' release are celebrating the release of these hostages, the 20 living hostages. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but it's another sound of a helicopter. Anyway, that was a great moment of joy and relief. However, since then, when it comes to the deceased hostages, we've had some more somber news, some more disappointing news for the family members of the hostages. There were 28 hostages who were believed to be deceased, and they had understood that, while many of them wouldn't be released today because it may be hard to retrieve and locate them, a good number would. And we have heard from the umbrella group representing the family members of the hostages, and they have said that only 4 of the 28 bodies of deceased hostages will be returned today. The family members have said that they're shocked and dismayed, and they've said that this is a blatant breach of the agreement by Hamas. Now, when the living hostages were released, that's when Israel then began the exchange of Palestinian prisoners. That includes some 1,700 people detained in Gaza during the war. They have begun arriving in Khan Yunis at Nasser Hospital, where they will undergo medical treatment and be reunited with their families. And we've also seen the release of some 250 so-called security prisoners, high security prisoners convicted of violent offenses. They were mostly released into the West Bank, into the city of Ramallah, but they will also be released into East Jerusalem, as well as sent into exile abroad.
Blake, a final question. When will the mortal remains of the others who were killed, when will they be returned beyond the 4 which were returned today?
That is a very important question, which no one knows the answer to at this stage. More than 4 were expected to be released today. We understood that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff had informed the family members of the hostages some days ago that some of the bodies would be hard to locate and that an international team would be tasked with trying to retrieve them. Hamas have been telling mediators for quite some time now that they simply don't know where some of the bodies are anymore, and that others are likely buried under rubble, of course, with so much of Gaza being destroyed. But it remains to be seen when more bodies will be delivered and when these families can finally have closure.
All right, Blake Sifton, great speaking to you. It is a time of incredible joy for those families, and hopefully this marks the beginning of the end of what's been a horrific war. Thanks very much indeed. Well, earlier on today, we heard the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and also the US President Donald Trump in Tel Aviv, in the Knesset, that's the Israeli parliament, speak to the situation. Let's listen in.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Mr. President, thank you for all you have done for us. I have submitted your nomination to be the first non-Israeli recipient of the Israel Prize, Israel's highest award. As to that other prize, just a question of time, you'll get it. But I want you to get the Israel Prize, our highest award, to our greatest friend.
All right, well, joining us now, Benny Benjamin, a former Israeli soldier, Daniel Block, and Mohammed Khatibi. Thank you all very much for being with us. It is just wonderful news that these hostages are back, and one only hopes that the mortal remains of all the others, they all come back very soon. But Benny, let me ask you this. Is there a sense that this is genuinely the beginning of a lasting peace, or do you suspect that this is perhaps, some sort of a lull, and that, the fighting may not necessarily end?
I think it must be genuine, because if it's not genuine, then it is no use of doing all this. As per my opinion, all the Palestinians from Gaza, they want peace with us, and I'm so sure about it because we are listening for more than 2 years about these Palestinians. About Hamas, I'm doubtful. If Hamas will be still there in Gaza, we'll not be able to have a peace, of course. Because their agenda is something else. It's not the same agenda that public wants. And if, as per Donald Trump and as per our Prime Minister or all our friends who are talking about, if there will be peace, the peace will be without Hamas.
Daniel Block, that in fact is the key point. A part of the agreement is that Hamas will be disarmed. Do you seriously expect Hamas to do that?
It's hard to say at this moment in time. But, you know, as you're noting, that might be one reason why the peace wouldn't last, is there are differing goals on the parts of the different parties. Hamas doesn't want to disarm. It doesn't want to give up its place of preeminence in Gaza. For Israel, that seems like a non-negotiable point. That said, you know, as the previous guest just said, we've gone through a whole lot here to reach this position. And so there's reasons to think it might happen. There's reasons to think that Donald Trump might stay on the case of Israel in order to make sure Israel abides by different parts of the peace agreement or lives with something less than the total victory it's been achieving. And that would maybe mean Hamas still has a place of power in Gaza of some kind, and that the peace will last nonetheless.
Mohammad Khatibi, realistically, Hamas is not the fighting force, the terrorist force it was even a few months back. I mean, that's effectively been destroyed. And Israel can come back literally within a period of hours, if not minutes, and then, you know, start real military operations in the few areas of Gaza which they haven't really been into. This being the case, is it all over for Hamas as a group, politically and otherwise?
I don't think that Hamas has been ended, because there is a large infrastructure of tunnels that are still there, and Hamas has been able to keep the captives for more than 2 years, and Israel, with all its technology, couldn't have found them. Also, Hamas, as the other guest said, will not relinquish its weapons. Maybe some kind of peace will stand, but I think that the situation in Gaza will be like what we have seen in Lebanon. Israel has kept its promise of not attacking Lebanon in large scale, but there have been minor violations of ceasefire, and I think that will be the case in Gaza Strip. Also, there is another important issue here. If Israel still finds ways to block mass delivery of aid, the peace deal will not be able to stand. And I think that pressuring Hamas to relinquish all its weapons is not the case, and it can't lead to any sort of long-lasting peace. But I think Hamas is really ready to compromise in some sort, but leaving all the weapons will be the end of Hamas, and Hamas knows this.
Okay. Benny Benjamin, that said, how do you see the future therefore going? Is this therefore a temporary situation? Realistically, do you expect Hamas to give up politically and militarily?
I don't think we can banish Hamas with politically, but by disarms, they must disarm, because it is not good for the Palestinians. Of course, we are also suffering, we don't say no, but Hamas must understand, if they want to make Gaza as all the countries are promising, they must disarm, otherwise it will not go. The deal is, Hamas is supposed to disarm themselves and leave from there. If they will do that, we don't have problems with the Palestinians. They can just stay back, everything is okay. We left Gaza before 20 years. So, I mean, it was not there, we were not there at all. They were living in peace with us, we were giving them everything, including the money from Qatar. And I think they instead of giving the public, they did what they did, and it's we don't want Hamas over there. That's definitely not only we, also the Mediterranean countries or Middle East countries. They don't want Hamas there.
Okay.
Except the Palestinians, maybe, yes.
Right. Daniel Block, it's said widely that terrorism cannot be defeated by the force of arms. But if you take a look at the situation now in West Asia, there's a fairly credible argument to suggest that by and large that's been the case. Hamas is a fragment of the military force that it once was. Hezbollah has been defeated. Iran has been silenced. The Houthis have taken hit after hit and cannot really target Israel in a comprehensive manner at all. Would you agree that the force of arms has defeated all of these forces, or do you believe that one way or the other they'll regroup?
I think we should be careful about speaking about permanent victories or permanent defeats in the Middle East, particularly when it comes to this conflict. Who knows what it's going to look like 1 month from now, what it's going to look like 1 year from now, what it's going to look like 10 years from now. There's certainly a lot of people, particularly in Gaza, but really throughout the Middle East, who I think have watched what Israel has done and are really angry and quite upset about it. People who have lost both their parents, one of their parents. And I wouldn't be surprised if many of those people have been radicalized in different ways and will look for opportunities to fight against Israel in the future, much as we saw with the global war on terror in the United States. The United States succeeded in bringing down Saddam Hussein's government. The United States succeeded in eventually killing Osama bin Laden, but that didn't put a stop to terrorist attacks against the United States. And you saw people who were radicalized who continue to fight against Washington. And I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see that happen here for years to come.
Mohammad Khatibi, who's going to pay for the reconstruction of Gaza? Who's going to build it?
I think there have been talks about Arab countries help build Gaza. But before talking about that, I would like to say that underestimating the power of the Iran's axis will be not helpful, because Hezbollah in Lebanon has its large arsenal of missiles and drones, and also the Houthis in the Yemen are capable to penetrate deep in the Iron Dome and are capable still to carry out operations in the Red Sea. Also, underestimating Hamas capabilities in Gaza is still not a case, and Hamas still controls large parts of Gaza, and if Israel withdraws without eliminating all of Hamas members, which is impossible, Hamas will control large parts of it, and the government in Gaza will not collapse. As we have seen in over 2 years, Hamas was able to control many parts of Gaza, and some parts of Gaza have been occupied for 2 or 3 times, but the core of Hamas was still operating. There are many cells, Hamas cells, that are capable to carry out operations inside Gaza Strip, and Israel can't do anything about that.
Unless they go back militarily, and then we are back to square one, right?
I think no one wants to start this again, but if Israel still persists on disarming Hamas, there will be no peace, because Hamas knows that if there is no weapon, there will be no Hamas. And the political side of Hamas has been attacked in Qatar, and we have seen that Israel has no intent to keep Hamas in its form, even the political
No,
form.
but that's exactly the point, Mohammad Khatibi. Israel is not going to stop for a moment in taking out Hamas. It's for Hamas at this stage to disarm and move away politically, so that there is some sort of other entity. Now, you can argue, you can argue quite rightly that Hamas will never do that, which actually brings me back to my same point. Given how ruthless Israel has been in taking on Hamas, there is every possibility that they would continue to do that. Realistically, at this stage, Hamas doesn't have any option. They either accept it or they be militarily vanquished. How does that help anything?
I don't think that militarily Israel is capable to disarm every and each member of Hamas.
You don't necessarily have to disarm each and every member. You have to disarm it to an extent where it ceases to be.
Israel has
it just results in huge bloodshed.
Israel
How does
has
Hamas
killed
hold
Yahya
on to
Sinwar.
whatever
Israel
control it has
killed.
in Gaza if people continue to lose lives? Please go ahead. Yeah.
Israel has killed Yahya Sinwar. Israel has killed Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, and many other leadership, members, but still Hamas is capable to do exchanges with Israel. So the group is capable to carry out operations,
But
to
how?
control captive.
What are the operations that you're talking about? They are militarily completely and utterly overwhelmed. We've got the Israeli army operating with impunity inside Gaza.
The ideology.
No,
the ideology
correct.
of
So the
Hamas,
ideology will remain. I'm just asking about whether they can remain as a cohesive military force. I argue that they can't,
can
not at the
regroup
present juncture.
if
I don't believe they represent
Israel
a physical threat to Israel in the way that they did 2 years back, let's say, when this all started.
I don't think that Israel will go back again in this form, because the international community wants this to end because of so many reasons, because the Arabs in the region, after the attacks on Qatar, have become eager to end this altogether.
That's an important point. Daniel Block, just the future of Gaza and the existence of Hamas. I'd met Benjamin Netanyahu a few weeks back, where he spoke for the first time about how he saw an interim authority, which is composed largely of international players, going into Gaza and providing a semblance of governance with Hamas completely out of the picture. Was Netanyahu being unrealistic, in your opinion?
I think that's another reason to approach this moment with a bit of skepticism. Again, I think there's a very good chance that this ceasefire and this peace lasts, but that's another really tricky issue. It's going to be very difficult to sort out for a few different reasons. One, like you said, I don't think Hamas is easily going to accept that. And while Hamas is certainly nowhere near the fighting force it once was, it does maintain arms. It does still have some of its tunnel network left. It is capable of staging various types of attacks. And so it has the ability to play a spoiler role here in various ways if it wants to. It can create a degree of chaos on the ground. The second is, I don't think various Arab states are going to want to serve or put some kind of peacekeeping force on the ground in Gaza if they're worried they're going to get caught in crossfire between Hamas and the Israeli Defense Forces. They don't want their own soldiers to be in that position. They know that's going to look very unpopular at home. One of the reasons they want this conflict to be over is because it's very bad for them. A lot of these governments want to be closer to Israel. They want Israel as a security partner, but that's wildly unpopular with their domestic constituents. And so it puts them in a somewhat awkward situation. A lot of the specifics of who's going to be in this kind of security force have not yet been sorted out, in part because I think these questions are really hard to answer. And I want to clarify, that's not to say it can't be done. That's not to say we won't get there. But I do think that that's another one of these big unanswered questions that we're going to have to sort out before we see a lasting peace.
All right, Daniel Block, Benny Benjamin, and Mohammed Khatibi. I'm out of time. Thank you all very much for being with us. But thank heavens that these hostages are back and there is a pause in the fighting. Let's just hope that the humanitarian situation in Gaza improves, that there is a free flow of aid that's required, and the loss of lives ends everywhere. Thank you all very much for being with us.